I'm so glad you're joining us.
Thanks.
Do you want to kind of rephrase your question and kind of see what we can discover together and what can help you with today?
Sure. I help people with emotional eating, and I know a fair amount about emotional eating, but I'd like to also learn about binge eating, talk about the relationship between the two, and maybe just some ideas on how to maybe address. I don't think we can address both things at once, but maybe there's a lot of crossover. So it'd be fun to
Mhm.
talk about that.
Yeah, so the big crossover I see, I think, is they both have this urge behind them of wanting to use food in some way, right? So
Hmm.
when we're emotional eating, we get this urge to kind of escape that emotion, to get rid of what we're feeling.
Hmm.
Whereas true binge eating, you kind of get the urge to just do the old habit. And I think
Hmm.
emotional eating can become a habit too. But I know for me in my journey, when I was binge eating, it was almost like sometimes my day would be going perfectly. Like everything was going well, and then I would suddenly want to binge eat and I'd be so confused why. Whereas emotional eating, you might see the clear connection of, oh, I had a really stressful day. I'm really overwhelmed at work. This person said something to me and I feel sad about it or mad about it. And you can see
Hmm.
that clear connection. But when I was binge eating, I felt like I would be like, okay, this has been such a great day, but I would get this urge to do the old habit. And I'll just give a little background for anyone who's going to be watching the replay. How I treat binge eating is as a habit where you get the urge to do something because in the past you have binged before. So it's usually stemming from a dieting background where you dieted, your brain freaked out and is like, we're not getting enough food. It tried to protect you to make sure you didn't waste away and that you were getting fed. So it started sending out strong urges to eat. And as you acted on those urges to eat, your brain got the reward of food. So it started conditioning in this brain pathway where now all of a sudden you see food, you get this urge to binge because you've done it so many times before and you keep rewarding it. So you can want to binge eat even if everything in your life seems like it's going okay. Whereas I feel like emotional eating, it's so much more important to focus on the life aspects part of it too, because if you're super overwhelmed at work and you don't have any tools for that, then you get home and there's only one solution you have, which is food. So you need other solutions outside of that. Does that kind
Hmm.
of ring true to you and
Oh yeah.
your experiences and what you know, Kimberly?
No, for sure. For sure. Hmm.
With emotional eating too, like, of course, there's the urges, but I think one of the biggest things is being able to sit with discomfort, is a skill really in every area of life
Yep.
that we're never taught in school, but it's like the key to success, whether you're trying to grow a business, change your eating habits, heal your marriage, like being able to sit with the uncomfortable emotions and not act from them is so important. I think a lot of people get yes, it's important to like reduce your stress, not be overwhelmed, like give yourself these tools. But a big mistake I see is people getting in the mindset that they have to change how they're feeling in order to stop acting the way that they're acting. And that's not true because we're going to have a life where we're going to have shitty stuff happen to us sometimes.
Yep.
And
Yep.
if we can learn to allow that discomfort and be there with it and know that it's not going to hurt us, it's just feeling a little uncomfortable, then we don't feel the need to react to it so much. It can just be there, and then we don't need to go to food. And then if it continues to be there, we don't make it a problem. So we don't panic and freak out that we're still stressed. We just allow that stress to be there and just continue without our day, through our day. I kind of think about it as like holding like a purse. Like you're just holding your pain, your stress, your overwhelm with you without doing anything about it or without freaking out and making it part of your entire being of who you are. It's just something you're feeling in that moment.
Hmm. Hmm. That's for sure. And I think that one of the things that I try to present, it kind of depends on stress is kind of different than pain. So to my way of thinking, and we have to walk through it.
Mhm.
You're the way you say it is sit with it. I think the other thing that I try to help people do is walk through it, you know?
Mhm.
Um, because unless you walk through it, you don't get resolution.
Mhm.
But it's sure a heck of a lot easier to go eat a half a sleeve of Girl Scout cookies and get that big dopamine hit and feel better immediately.
Mhm.
Even though emotionally we don't feel better, the hit of the dopamine gives us some relief.
Mhm. Yeah. I'd be curious, Kimberly, if you want to share kind of like your background with emotional eating and kind of what
Mhm.
your journey has been like.
Yeah. So I've had a fairly stressful adulthood, raising 5 kids, working as a nurse, and um, you know, I've been divorced, and I gained 2 kids, and I had probably the most difficult time was when I had 5 teenagers in my house all at the same time. And that they were stair step, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20. And it was a very stressful time. And the interesting thing is sometimes I would think, oh my gosh, I need a gin and tonic. you know, those were the real bad days. The less bad days were to just pop something in my mouth, have something to eat. And it was generally sweet, not salty. And I think that we all have kind of different things that we do. But I'm a registered nurse, and then I also became a professional cook.
Mm.
So once I began to understand healthy eating, because that's what I teach. I teach healthy eating and cooking and eating for optimal health. And so it's a lot of plant based. It's a lot of just really, really what we call nutrient dense foods, because nutrient dense, we feel more satisfied, for one thing. For another thing, we're healthier. And in teaching, the teacher always teaches what she needs to learn. And if we eat better, um, it just helps, because then when we go to emotionally eat, our body is kind of like, no, that makes me feel bad. And so basically, if we can, what I have learned is if I can get present in my body when I'm going to the kitchen or, whatever, if I can get really present and say, all right, what's the real deal? What's behind this? Then it's much easier to say, oh, wait a minute, let me think about that. And there's the walk through it, because I know that the binge eating, or the emotional eating, isn't going to take that away.
Mhm.
It's a temporary relief. And so I have the basis of my work now is mindfulness and getting present, because it's just like peeling the onion back. Keep going back. Well, what's the real deal? And for the past 3 years, I've done a lot of that, just getting present. And it helps my life in every area,
Mm.
not just with eating, but with everything. That's
Mhm.
kind of that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. And what I really like to notice is like how you said like food never helps anything.
Mhm.
One of my favorite visuals to think about is like when you were a kid and you had like the word in the picture and you like drew the line and matched it up together.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people have learned to do is they have their like problems and they have their solutions. And if food is the solution, all their problems, all the lines are drawn to food. Like this is the solution, this is the solution. When really there's only one line that should be drawn to food, and it's hunger.
Hunger. Mhm.
Hunger is the only problem that can be solved with food. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Right.
Think about like if a solution was like if we were cold and we were to put on a jacket, that would be the solution to that
Mhm.
problem. Imagine if we put on a jacket every time we were feeling like overwhelmed, like if we weren't hot, like it wouldn't make sense. It's like, wait, that's the wrong solution. And
Mhm.
we think about that in our brain. We're like, why would I put on a jacket right now? Like, I'm not cold. That's not the solution. And
Mhm.
that's how we want to be thinking about food too, is like,
Got it.
wait, why would I eat food if I'm stressed? I'm not hungry. That's not the
Mhm.
solution. If I'm stressed, I need a different solution. I need to take some deep breaths. I need to pause.
Yeah.
I need to ask for help. Like that's the
Mhm.
solution that we need for that, or even
Yeah.
just sitting with it.
Mhm.
And when we think about this word of like comfort eating too, but it's like, but food is comforting. Like
Mhm.
it's really not. I like to call it discomfort eating because it always makes you more uncomfortable because it's not what your body needs.
Right.
When you're
Mhm.
eating, it's like it's causing your body so much additional pain because it's having to work to process all of that, to deal with that. So it's always and only going to make you uncomfortable if you don't have the hunger for it. And it's
Yeah.
looking at that as the truth and telling ourselves the true story
Yeah.
that when we emotionally eat, we're never going to feel better. It's always going to make us feel
Mhm.
worse in the long run.
Mhm. Mhm. Agreed. Agreed. And one of the things that I also think about is, so I've used this, or any of us who use this solution to feeling better. Well, then pretty soon, after some time goes by, then we're upset about the fact that we've used this solution and now we weigh more than we want to weigh, or whatever. And so it's just like shooting yourself in the foot,
Mhm.
you know. Um, so that's uh, you kind of gave a reason, and that's like another reason I'm giving. It's like, oh, pretty soon now I'm stressed out because I weigh too much. So it's a vicious cycle, vicious
Right.
circle.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm curious about what you see, kind of like that root cause of binge eating. You mentioned the urge. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the biggest root cause for most people where it like originally starts is this dieting background. Now,
Dieting.
there
Mhm.
are some cases where, maybe there was some like childhood trauma involved
Mhm.
that can lead to binge
Mhm.
eating. And in those, that's more of like a case for therapy versus someone like me, like as a coach, because those are some deeper rooted issues. But I find majority of people, it's honestly just like a background of dieting that leads them into these binge eating ways. And yeah, so with the urges, that's really what we need to focus on to get rid of it. Of course, there's other skills, and a big thing I teach in my program is also around hunger and fullness
Mhm.
and your thoughts around certain foods, like in my trigger food process. So there's definitely other skills that are important. But the only thing that separates binge eaters from a natural eater is the binge eater has urges and the natural eater doesn't. The natural
Mhm.
eater doesn't think about, oh my God, it'd be so fun to go and eat 20 cookies right now. That just doesn't even occur to them. They don't
No.
get that desire. It just doesn't even pass their mind. Whereas someone with a binge eater has trained their brain to think that way. So they get these urges to do that thing. They get this feeling of over desire. It's a
Mhm.
false desire, but it's still there. And that's
Mhm.
what we want to change.
Mhm.
Now, how do we change that? We need to stop acting on it, which is like the most simple thing. Like, if you want to stop binge eating, stop binge eating. But that's how we change any habit in our life, right? Like, if someone wants to stop smoking, they need to stop
Right.
smoking. Well,
Stop
there's don't
smoking.
want to do it anymore
Yeah.
because your brain learns that this isn't a behavior you do anymore.
Mhm.
Just like, the reason we get this craving to brush our teeth every day is because we've done it every day for so many years.
Yeah.
And so it just feels normal to us. If we don't brush our teeth, something feels weird and we get that weird feeling and we feel like this urge of like, I need to brush my teeth now. I need to get some toothpaste in me. So it's like how we've trained our brain. So in order to like untrain our brain from binge eating, what needs to happen is you need to feel triggered and get that urge and not act on it.
Mhm.
And the getting triggered part is important too. This is where when people say like just avoid all of your binge triggers, just keep the foods out of the house, just don't get into stressful situations, just avoid all those things. That is actually the worst thing you can do because you're
Mhm.
never going to change your brain then.
Yeah.
It's like you're just hiding in a cave and hoping nothing
Mhm.
bad comes in it, which is like a
Right.
very small way to live your life. So
Mhm.
when we get triggered, we're activating that brain neural pathway and it's lighting up and saying, okay, now is our time to shine. Now's that time to give you the urge and for you to eat the food. But what we need to do is we need to have that brain pathway light up. So feel triggered, feel like we're around
Mhm.
the big plate of cookies, we feel uncomfortable. And then we need to take a new pathway. So in order to take a new pathway, we see it happening, we allow that discomfort to be there of not acting on it because that is
Mm-hmm.
your brain changing in that moment, and changing your brain is a little uncomfortable. You just
Yeah.
sit with it, you move on, you go talk to people, you call a friend, you do like those types of strategies to
Mm-hmm.
help yourself sit with them. So that way it will go away, because it will always go away eventually, the urges, if we give it a chance. But most
Mm-hmm.
of the time we just eat so quickly that we don't even give it the
Right.
opportunity to go away.
Right.
And then once we do something else and our brain learns we're not going to eat, it is going to decondition that brain pathway
Mm-hmm.
because it's learning that this isn't something we want to do.
Right.
And something that's really important with that is, because we're not giving our brain the food, which is the food was the reward before, a
Mm-hmm.
different reward we want to give our brain is celebration. Our
Mm-hmm.
brain loves feeling good things and getting excited. So we want to get really excited anytime we see the urge come up and we don't act on it, because that is like neural super glue in our brain, and it's going to make that new thing stick. Then the next time you get an urge, you're going to remember, oh my gosh, I got so excited the last time. I had so much fun because I felt so proud of myself. I felt amazing in my body. And when your brain has that strong positive memory of not acting on the urge,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be more likely that you're going to sit with it again and feel okay not going into it and eating the
Uh-huh.
food.
Uh-huh. So you're actually building a new pattern
Mm-hmm.
of a new response, which is we get there in different ways, but it's the same with emotional eating. We're building a new response,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of eating, we're looking at, all right, why am I really upset? What's really
Mm-hmm.
going on?
Mm-hmm.
But they are kind of different. So that's thank you. It's I feel grateful that you taught me the difference. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with emotional eating, it can be a bit more complicated because we're dealing with sometimes like emotions are big and they're complicated.
mhm,
And they sometimes have a
mhm,
lot to figure out within them. And so sometimes like getting through that while you're also having this desire and urge to eat can be like a little bit more nuanced. And I think that there's a little bit more strategy involved there. Where
mhm,
with true binge eating, where you just get this urge to like eat everything absolutely in sight for like no apparent reason, like that is
mhm,
like true binge eating. It's really nice because it is more simple. I think binge eating is more simple than like overeating or emotional eating.
mhm.
Because again, it's so clear to see with binge eating that that's not something you want to do. Like no one would ever put on their to-do list, let me eat 20 Oreos right now. Like, we
Yeah.
know that's not something we want to do. Whereas something like, would I have like one or two Oreos right now? Sometimes that's a bit more like, I don't know, maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. So, I think personally, I always found getting over binge eating was easier for me than the overeating part, but they're both ultimately you're eating too much food. So if you do one, you can do the other. If you stop binge eating, you can definitely learn how to stop overeating as well.
Hmm. Another curiosity I have is what you think and what you've seen on sugar addiction.
That's a good one. That's a big one that everyone asks about. So, in my perspective, I have a few thoughts about sugar. Like, I'm obviously not
Mhm,
a deep sciencey sugar researcher, but I have done
mhm,
quite a bit of research on what the research says.
mhm, mhm.
There's the big common study that sugar is more addictive than cocaine, right? They like gave rats
Yeah,
sugar water, then they gave them cocaine, and they
I read that study. Yeah. Hmm.
what a lot of people don't realize about that study is that the mice were also they weren't being it was like they weren't being fed at all, or they weren't being fed enough. They were also in a state where they weren't being properly fed.
Uh-huh.
And that is very similar to if you were dieting, right? So
Right.
if you are dieting, it is more likely you are going to binge eat on sugar because your body is in this restrictive state.
Hmm.
Um, if when they fed the mice like a fully nutritious full diet where they had plenty of access to food, to water, they did not choose the sugar water over the cocaine because
Uh,
they felt, it's cocaine, right? Like it's a little more addictive. So it's important to look at like the details behind those things
yeah.
too.
Hmm.
But I also find that, even if we just like forget the science for a bit, if we think about the mindset part of it,
Hmm.
if you tell yourself I am addicted to sugar, you're
Hmm.
going to feel addicted to sugar. And
Hmm.
it is going to be impossible for you to try to eat in moderation then, because
Yeah.
anytime you sit down with a cookie, if you have this belief that I'm just someone who's addicted to sugar, there is no way you're going to take one bite of it and be like, I'm good. You are going to act in a way as if you were a person who's
Right.
addicted
Right.
to sugar. So you're
Right.
going to overeat it. You're gonna binge eat on it. So, yes, I'm not ignorant to the fact that sugar does have this biological effect on our body, but I
Hmm.
think it's important to realize like it's not something that takes over us and makes us this alien out of our
Right.
body. We can't control anything. It's like we are still always in charge. No one is out here going spending all their money on pounds and pounds of just sugar itself from the grocery store
Right.
and eating by the spoonfuls. Like that would be a true sugar addiction. Like we're like, oh, I like cookies, but like of course we like cookies. There's sugar and fat and flour, and our brain likes those things because it means
Yeah.
better for our survival to our brain. So knowing that like of course it's natural to have desire for sugar, like that's just part of our
Mhm.
biochemistry that's going to like sugar because that's a survival thing.
Yeah.
Knowing that, but also knowing at the end of the day we're in control and we need to strengthen that belief that we're in charge and the sugar doesn't have power over us because that's the only way we're going to be able to moderate it and not feel like it's taking over our entire life because it's not. It's an inanimate object. It's just there. We still get to decide.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, good points. All good points.
Yeah.
I see it a little bit differently in that I totally agree with you is it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mhm.
If you tell yourself I'm addicted, that's what you're going to be because you're telling yourself something that you may or may not necessarily be true, but if
Mhm.
you reinforce that enough times, you're going to believe it's true. So I,
Right.
I totally agree with that part. Um, I do think that from some studies that I have read, there are about 30% of us that we can just walk away, not think about it again. There are about 30% of us who are like, oh, yeah, I can do a little bit of that. And then there are another 30% of us that are like, once you've tasted that, um, you know that that cake is sitting out on the counter in the kitchen, and you can't stop thinking about it. Um, and I think that that's similar to alcohol, that's similar to drugs, that's similar to porn, all those same things where you get that big hit.
Mhm.
Um, and from the research I've read, some of us are susceptible, some of us aren't.
Mhm.
My husband is the kind of guy who he doesn't ever need dessert. Now, he needs a glass of wine
Mhm.
too. Um, Another thing is the salty stuff. There are people who lean more toward the salty than the sweet. I'm not really sure what that's about so much as um, because it's not creating that big dopamine. Because the more we eat, the more downregulated that dopamine response gets.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure what the salty part is. But anyway, I think that different people do respond differently. But I sure agree that anybody can get over it if they choose to.
Yes, for sure. Right. And yeah, of course there's like different like genetic
Yes.
susceptibility too from like different backgrounds. Like that's definitely an impact on it. But I
Hmm.
think just realizing, like you said, what no matter what category you've fallen into in the past, you can definitely get through it and
Yeah.
figure it out if
Hmm.
you choose to do so. Like it is possible.
Hmm.
We have someone joining us, so we'll see if they want to say hi and have any questions before we wrap.
Okay.
Hello, welcome. We were just about to wrap up, but let me know if you have any questions or thoughts you wanted answered. If you're just here to listen along, we can keep going, but we are coming to the end here, so I can always send you the replay as well. You may have been connecting to the audio to that, so I'll repeat it. We're just wrapping up here, but let me know if you have any questions or thoughts you wanted answered. I can always send you the replay as well. We just had a good conversation about sugar addiction, emotional eating, the differences between emotional eating and binge eating. So if you have anything specifically within that, I'm happy to go over with it. You're also welcome if you want to put something in the chat, if you can unmute. I'll pop open the chat. Okay, well, I'm going to assume you can't speak, but again, put it in the chat if you need anything. But me and Kimberly were just wrapping up, so I am going to wrap us up today, but I'll be sending out the replay so you can see everything about the sugar addiction, emotional eating, all of the good topics we just went over. But I'm just going to give everyone a reminder that I am raising my one-on-one coaching prices on March 14th. So we have about a week left. This is going to be the best time to get in with me if you've been wanting to get support in the one-on-one way. One-on-one coaching is really nice because you get me as like your best friend, holding your hand step by step, every step of the way. And it's going to be like your own personal Q&A session every week. So you get weekly 50-minute calls with me where we do coaching. I lead you through all the coaching, but you really get unlimited access to me also through text and voice message support. So you're always having a coach in your pocket for anything you need. You're also going to get a lot of structure. I have lessons and worksheets that I give you. We go over mindset, where we talk more in depth about emotions, your thoughts, how they're connected. I teach you my trigger food process, which really helps if you feel like you're in the sugar addiction category. I give you a really specific process that we do together in a very safe, controlled way to help you get over that. We learn about your urges and how to get through them in a stress-free way. We talk about hunger and fullness cues, how you can conquer those, really use them to guide your eating, how to build unshakable confidence in yourself and your body. And finally, we talk about how to make sure you're maintaining your progress for life. I really pride myself on having this be a lifelong program where we're really making these internal brain changes. I'm not just giving you a 3-week meal plan and saying good luck with it. We're changing your brain from the inside out. So I'm going to put the link in the chat if either of you guys want to look for a consultation. If you're watching this on replay, there will be the link in the email for my website. It's theconfidenteater.org, and you can go to the Work With Me page. But you also are going to get a money back guarantee in my program. So know if you have some fears around, is this going to work for me? I do have a policy around that because I want you to be happy. I want you to make sure that you're making the progress you want to be making. On the podcast next week, Become a Confident Eater, I'm going to have one of my clients coming in, one of my past clients who just finished up the program. So you're going to be able to hear her story there. I also have lots of testimonials on my website. And your next step is just to book a free consultation call with me. You can get on my calendar. And I hope to talk to you guys then. Otherwise, any last minute thoughts or questions?